Hello class, my name is Kyle Anderson, and the proposition and main claim for my speech is that the removal of the NCAA and NBA's one and done rule would yield considerable benefits to all those involved in the basketball world. Now can I get a quick show of hands for who's familiar with professional or collegiate basketball? Okay, so for those of you who are unfamiliar with the one and done rule, in 2005 the NCAA and NBA came into agreement that the one and done rule forces all players attempting to declare for the NBA draft to be at least 1 year removed from high school or at least 19 years of age. Whether that year is spent playing abroad, at college, or any other option, at least 1 year must be waited once they are finished with high school. The three supporting claims that I will use in my speech are: 1, that the one and done rule weakens college universities' academic reputation; 2, that the one and done rule greatly jeopardizes and negatively impacts poverty-stricken student athletes; and 3, that a 0 or 2 rule would be a significant improvement. For my first point, the one and done rule weakens college and universities' academic reputation. When David Stern, the NBA commissioner at the time, implemented this rule, the majority of basketball players good enough to play in the NBA coming out of high school are now essentially forced to play 1 year of college basketball. Shehan Jaraya gathered data from previous NBA drafts to show the differences in high schoolers being drafted from 2000 and 2005 to 2011 and 2016. From 2000 to 2005, only 22 high schoolers were drafted in the first round. As a note, 8 of these, or for an outlier, 8 of these people were drafted in the 2004 draft. While from 2011 to 2016, a total of 53 college freshmen were drafted in the first round. That's a 140% increase since the one and done rule was passed. Collegiate universities attempt to recruit these star basketball players in order to play for their team and go to school. However, the issue remains that if the player's only goal is just to use the school as a stop on the way to the NBA, then the students won't care or won't put a value on their own education. Let's use former LSU student athlete Ben Simmons as an example. Ben Simmons was talented enough to go to the NBA out of high school, but the one and done rule prohibited him from doing so. With that knowledge, the second that his basketball career was over at LSU, once they did not make the tournament, he immediately dropped out of all of his classes and left the school. Jaraya emphasized that reports showed that even during the season, he would consistently skip his classes and fail the majority of them. LSU put him on academic probation, but still allowed him to play basketball due to the revenue that he brought towards the school. This resulted in showing him special treatment and ended up hurting LSU's academic reputation, and further proves that the one and done rule should be removed. For my second main point, that the one and done rule greatly jeopardizes and negatively impacts poverty-stricken student athletes. Before the one and done rule was in place, the NBA saw players like Kobe Bryant and LeBron James come out of high school and become future Hall of Famers. On the other hand, there's instances like Kwame Brown, who was almost an immediate bust in the league. Regardless of the player's future success, coming out of high school and being drafted in the NBA would result in an immediate paycheck for those players and their families. For significant amounts of high school basketball players, the NBA is the financial out for them and their families. Why is it fair that universities make these pro-ready players wait an entire year and lose a year's worth of earning potential for when that can help support them and their family? As Paul Slobdozian puts in an article he wrote for Bleacher Report, college universities essentially get free labor from their players and earn significant amounts of money off of them with no form of monetary payment in return other than a free education. But for the majority of these players, they need the money right away to help support them and their families. Slobdozian also states that the NBA has a G League, which is a developmental league for players that may not necessarily be ready for the NBA, but it still results in them getting a paycheck. And basically, there's 26 out of the 30 NBA teams right now. There are 26 affiliate teams, so that's 26 teams around the country that players could play out of high school if they're not currently ready for the NBA. Because again, that is a small percentage compared to the amount of college basketball players. Even if a high schooler may not be NBA ready out of high school, but they could still they could still use the immediate paycheck and beneficial paycheck that they would get, they deserve the option of going to the G League and earning that paycheck instead of essentially being held hostage for an entire year at a university. For my third and final point, that a 0 or 2 rule would be much more effective for all universities, teams, and players. A 0 or 2 rule would be an extremely beneficial replacement to the original one and done rule already in place. The 0 or 2 rule would be a great help not only to the players but all the coaches and NBA teams as well. As mentioned before, if a high schooler decides to go pro and skip college, then they could declare for the NBA draft or be in the developmental league. But if they choose to go to school, then this rule would force them to stay for at least 2 years. This way, the players must pass their classes and learn the value of an education. They could also the school could also hold programs to how to handle money, how to handle all their finances once they do go and declare for the draft. That way, the players could also develop mentally and physically to also better themselves for the NBA. But if they do not get drafted, then they still have an education to better themselves and build upon that. Josh Skoch provides an example for when in 2012, University of North Carolina could have landed the nation's top high school basketball player, but went other ways because of how much time and energy would have spent on a one-year player. The 2 years not only allows for a valuable education to play a role, but also for team chemistry with coaches and for opportunities of fans to build relationships with the team and their players. Also, if there's a 2-year rule for college football, and it has shown success, so a similar rule for basketball would be effective as well. In conclusion, the removal of the one and done rule would be greatly beneficial for 3 main reasons. First, that the one and done rule greatly weakens college universities' academic reputation. Secondly, that a one and done rule greatly jeopardizes and negatively impacts poverty-stricken student athletes. And third, that a 0 or 2 rule would be a significant improvement. Finally, I reiterate that the removal of the NCAA and NBA's one and done rule would greatly improve all individuals involved in the basketball world. Thank you.
All right, let me start in the middle because that's where I think I have the biggest issue that's going on here. A lot of the stuff that you have in the second point really feels like it's a value argument rather than an issue of fact. The notion that some injustice is being done to these athletes, that it's a waste of time and resources, the notion that the reputation of the schools is damaged in some way. Most of those things deal with value-based issues, and so I think it's a little bit problematic there. I'm not saying that there aren't some factual claims there. For example, the harm to the institutions could be quantified, what it does to their, like I said, their standing or to their ability to recruit other athletes. That might be measurable in some way. The economic impact is vaguely suggested at best, but mostly you're talking about how it's a waste of time and energy, and you do have an example on that particular point, but it sounds like it's, so why did he have to spend that time doing that, which he dropped out of his classes as soon as they were out of the playoffs and all that sort of thing. I was just going, well, I can see why somebody might find that infuriating, but I'm not sure that it's an issue of fact. I think it's an issue of value. Now, the other arguments suggesting that it is having an impact on the NBA draft, it's changing the way people are pursuing players. For instance, that it is, I think you need to show that it's a negative effect, that they're going for more of these players or there's more of them coming out earlier. That's the 140% increase. Well, I don't know how many came out after their freshman year before this rule was put into place versus how many are coming out now. 140% increase, that could mean that we were dealing with 3 and the next year there were 6. I think you need to give us a little bit more context on that argument. The last argument is an interesting point because I do think that you get to a point where you're saying there would be a benefit and this would work. Well, I think you show what could happen. I'm not so sure that you're as strong on what would happen. The analogy that you draw to the NFL, I think, is a good start on that point, but it really doesn't seem like it develops very well. Good setup at the proposition and preview. I thought you had a very good summary at the end. Okay, that's it.